Matheson History Museum, our mission is to preserve and interpret the history of Gainesville, Alachua County, and the surrounding regions. There's a lot of museums in this area, but there's not very many of them that focus on you and our community. We are your museum.
We were known as a small community museum. We're on the precipice of becoming something much greater than that so that we can reach out to a broader audience in our community. When people come, maybe move here from another community, they don't know much about Gainesville. How do they find out? They come to their local history museums to learn the history of what came before them. And then they become more connected to their communities and become more vital community members.
If you've been in Gainesville for a long time, we hope that you'll see something that you remember. Or, if you grew up here, you might find yourself in our school yearbook collection.
A yearbook from my high school, Santa Fe High School. It's 1978. Here I am.
We're fortunate to have an organization like the Matheson History Museum because we need something to document where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. And the Matheson is very much engaged in trying to do that.
Where we are right now, this is the office of the 1867 Matheson House. So Christopher Matheson was born in this house in the 1870s. He's one of the longest serving mayors in the town's history. And Sarah Matheson is really the founder of the museum. She is the one who helped to open the museum in the American Legion building in 1994. And then when she passed away in 1996, the house became part of the museum as well. This is the third oldest house in Gainesville, and it became part of the museum in 1996. We have 4 historic buildings as part of our complex. And our newest building is the Gainesville Gospel Tabernacle, which is where we have our library and archives now. We have our main museum building, which is in the old American Legion Hall, and that is where we host most of our exhibits and programs. We have the Tyson Tool Barn, a place where John Mason Tyson was a local tool collector, and he built this barn on his property to house his collection of historic tools.
At that time, the city was not allowing buildings to be moved on the streets like they had allowed, so they had to deconstruct it and reconstruct it on site. And then all the tools were brought back in, and it's now been totally cataloged, and it's quite a collection.
And what drew me into the Matheson way back when and what first got me involved, I loved the talks that the Matheson did. I loved the way the Matheson brought in people from our community, many times authors, sometimes just people who were engaged in other activities in the community and came and gave a talk to the community.
One of our goals is to connect all the history museums, these outlying satellites that are like in Archer and High Springs and such. We want to bring them into a larger family of history museums in this county to highlight our history.
We really want to show things from our African American community, from the LGBTQ community, and all of these different histories that have not always been included in museums. We want to make sure that these groups can come into the museum and see themselves and feel welcome.
We had the idea maybe we could do a joint project, do a book between the Matheson History Museum and the Writers Alliance of Gainesville. So that project was born. Our book is called Local Lives in a Global Pandemic, Stories from North Central Florida and Alachua County and Gainesville and maybe a little bit beyond. The whole idea is to document what we went through as a community. There's lots of towns that are not going to have any history of what they experienced through COVID. We're going to be able, we already are documenting what the community experienced, and we're going to document it even further.
We want people to see themselves in this museum, and we also want to make sure that some of the histories that aren't as commonly known are brought to light and highlighted through our exhibits and programs. We want to be your museum, and part of that means that we need your help to keep going. So we are always a free museum. If you would like to leave us a donation or become a member, that would be wonderful. That is what helps us to continue our work.
A 501c3 nonprofit, and we rely heavily on community support. Volunteer support is very important.
Our members are the heart of this institution. Everybody in our community can come here to learn about their history. It's, as we say, your museum.
We are not part of UF, we're not part of the city, we're not part of the county. Your gifts help us to put together our exhibits and programs. They help us to preserve our collection of Alachua County history, and they also help us to preserve our 4 historic buildings.
That's a real plus that we can offer people in the community here that aren't always available. Sometimes we forget what's right before us, and I think the Matheson helps remind us of what we actually have.
We need to learn from our history or we're condemned to repeat it, and that brings me to a quote that I really like by Maya Angelou. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again.
There's big history and there's little history. And there's history that's local to our community. And this is the perfect place, the perfect venue to come discover your local history. It's unique to just Alachua County and Gainesville in our area. You can find it right here at the Matheson.
It's nice to be there and kind of forget the cars driving by and just kind of take a look and think, gee, this is how it was in a gentler, quieter time, and I kind of like quiet and gentle.
Our hours do vary. Right now we are open on Wednesday through Saturday from 1 to 4 p.m. But I do encourage you to check out our website, mathesonmuseum.org, to make sure what our current hours are if you want to visit us. Gainesville and Alachua County has such a rich, interesting history. So kind of preserving and keeping this history alive is something that's really important to us. And we want to share this history and bring it to life in ways that it hasn't before.